And we're coming to you live from Linden. One of the reasons we're late this morning, we are on the site of this sawmill fire in Linden, which has now been burning for over 48 hours now. Good morning, folks, wherever you're joining us from. Let us know if you're hearing us loud and clear. I see Magnell is on. I see Wycliffe is on as well. Forgive us those who are accustomed to joining us from YouTube, because we're on the ground and moving. We're not going to be able to broadcast from both places simultaneously. I see Albert Trim is on. Let us know if you're hearing us loud and clear. We're on the ground here in Linden, where this sawmill waste site is burning, and there's just perhaps acres, and there's a valley here as well. We're looking down in a valley. I was just told that persons live in this valley here. Let me show you how close I can get to some of this. This is waste, sawmill waste, just burning here. These people live down in this valley. And that's flames right there. Now this has been burning for more than 48 hours now. That's the expanse of it. And I regret we don't have the capacity to give you guys aerial shots simultaneously, but we're going to have that up on our page. Good morning, folks. Welcome to our broadcast. It's 8:43 where we are. See? And this has been burning. Ameila, thank you so much. Colvis and all the other folks. We regret we won't be able to go through to YouTube simultaneously this morning. We were trying. Wycliffe, we see you there too. Now, I wish we could get a better shot of this, because this is a valley we're looking down in here. And we're a little off from this, and it is hot. It is hot. And in some portions, I'm seeing some huge flames shooting up from down in this valley, which is off the side of this, where they have this sawmill. Which is off the side of where they have this sawmill here. A very good morning, folks. Andre Marks, I see you there. I guess yes. Eric says he's hearing us loud and clear. So this is a major fire here in Linden that has been burning for the last 48 hours. And this is Amelia's ward, Linden, we're in. I just wanted to show you that there's actual fire here. This is perhaps like a coal pit at this point, right? This is perhaps like a coal pit at this point. A lot of heat here. We're looking down in the valley here. And perhaps as long as they've had this sawmill here, they've been dumping the waste down in this valley. And we're going to try to get you guys some better images later on in the morning. But this is this sawmill fire here in Linden. And we thought by now this might have been under control. Of course, we saw some information put out by the Region 10 RDC. We've seen the deputy chair, the chairman of Region 10, the deputy chair, all giving information. So it's a huge piece of real estate here. On the other side from where we are, we can see the Guyana Fire Service tender is there. And we're going to try to get around that side. But just by way of information, we're going to try to get around at that end to see what's going on the other side. It's a pretty huge expanse here. So the Region 10 has put out, they've activated their Regional Disaster Preparedness and Response Protocol, which manages emergencies in the region. And we're advised also that the Civil Defense Commission is also involved in coordinating with the Guyana Fire Service to evacuate And if any external support is needed, they're going to be on hand to do that. But we are told that people live down in this area. This is a valley that we're looking down into here, in Amelia's ward, and this is almost surrounded by sawmills on all sides. And this has been burning, as I said, for the last 48 hours. We're looking down in a valley here from our vantage point. We're also learning that one of the critical challenges that is facing the firefighters here is a lack of reliable water. All right, now Region 10 is bordered by 3 rivers, the Essequibo, the Berbice, and the Demra River. A lack of water is one of the constraints that they have. And we've seen the regional officials asking for help in terms of bulldozers and front-end loaders to assist here. But this was happening on the ground. We're going to try to get across to the other side and bring you guys some more information. But this is a valley that we're looking down in at this end. Again, we regret for our YouTube audience that we aren't able to go through to YouTube. But let me get around to the... it's going to be a little walk, folks, so bear with us. But this is a sawmill site we're on. And it's apparent that on this side of Amelia's ward, you have a number of sawmills that occupy this area here. So you guys are going to forgive us. There's some of the equipment in the area here. We're heading out. I'm going to have to stop for a second and tie my laces, which have become undone. But this is the area here, and I'm going to try to walk around to the other side. As I said, this has been about 72 hours now. This area here is under fire, and they've been asking for some help. All right, I got to stop in a second. You all forgive me, but this is what you're seeing here is the sawmill. Tying my laces here. And 72 hours this fire has been burning in this area. We regret we can't bring you guys better imagery, but we're going to put some of that up on our page, and you'll be able to see it during the course of the day. So give us a sec. All right, I think that's good. Laces tied, and I'm going to try to walk around the other area here. Again, this is a sawmilling area. That is the main road into Linden you're seeing here. Those cars are going out of Linden, and this is the sawmill area all around this here. I want to get across to where they have the fire tenders. Let me head out to the main road. I'm just going to walk across and show you guys some of that, so you get the valid and credible information. CDC is coordinating with the Ghana Fire Service, and the regional officials, they've activated their disaster protocols. All right, so we're up at the main road. We're heading in the direction as though we're heading into the township, but we're just coming around on the other side to see what's going on this side, because for a minute there I almost said there was no presence here of the Ghana Police Force or the Fire Service, but then when I looked across the other side, I could see some of the lights from the fire tender, and there's a huge plume of smoke here, as you can imagine, and so visibility isn't too clear from one side to the next. So we've come back out on the road and we're walking across the other side. I want to thank the regional officials, especially Deputy Chairman Margorin. Morning. Deputy Chairman Margorin, who has been informing us every so often. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Young lady giving me some encouragement to continue doing the great job. You all heard that? She didn't want to be on camera. To continue doing the great job. All right, so I'm going to be talking with the deputy chair of the region, Margorin. I see him here.
Run, sir, run.
Morning, 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 morning. Guys telling me to run, to run. So a lot happening here, folks. We're going from another side. Again, a large swath of the real estate here is Sawmills on this side of Amelia's ward. So no doubt they've been pouring the sawmill waste behind the sawmills down in this valley for years. And so all of that is burning here. And once we're off the live, we're going to try to get you guys some more video and photos so you get a good sense of what's happening here. As I said, I did spot the deputy, well, the vice chairman of the region, Mark Goring, who's on the ground here. Mark, I was just saying thanks to you for keeping us up to date with what's happening here. I want you to grab this mic off of me and talk to us about what's happening here. Folks, Mark Goring, the regional vice chair.
Hi, good morning.
Hold it close so we get a good audio. And walk us through what's going on here.
Okay, sure. Morning to your viewers. I'm here all day yesterday. Had a
walk
good
us around because I want them to see the fire service on the ground here and what's happening on the other.
Okay. So basically, this entire valley that you see here, it's surrounded by 7 to about 8 or 9 sawmill. I mean, there's other sawmill beyond more to the east, and they've been dumping stuff here for as long as 20 years. Since the first sawmill that established here since in late 90s or early 2000, and so this is a lot of debris that would have backed up thousands of cubic meters of debris would have been accumulated over a 2-decade period. And so with sawdust and all these wood sawdust normally create gas, methane and all these different things. And you know, there's a large build-up there. And so when this fire started, which would have been more than 48 hours going on to 72 hours, you know, it was more in the gully and it came up and started threatening the sawmill. This when, you know.
So it came up from the gully?
From the gully, yeah.
Let's see how close we can get without.
Yeah, we can go close, and this was the area that I was most concerned about, because here is where the sawmill is, the last sawmill end here on the western end. But then beyond about 200 or 300 feet going in that direction, the southern direction, we have farmers, because this area, and let me say this to the record, this entire area should have never been a industrial site, right? This is a watershed. There's creek down there that person use to water the farm. Some person use it to drinking purpose and other purposes, and it drain into the Karakara Creek. So from my vantage point, this area.
It's hot here. Just want to give people a sense. And it's
yeah.
very, very hot here. We're seeing some huge flames.
So the fire service had to be on guard all night monitoring this fire, because this fire, we noticed it was coming around here. There's an elderly woman that live right over here, right? She here as long as possible. I think since in the 80s, 70s, she here a very long time. So she can mostly, you know, give you a history on this area. But this area was set aside by the old, I think Dembo or Guyman, whichever one of the owners of the bauxite company. So no one could have lived there. This is why this area had left like this. And then all of a sudden the lands was given over to Lands and Survey, and then it was issued out to a person to have sawmill. So going down there, and thank God that we had a little rain.
Just repeat what I asked you so the audience here, because you know we have one mic. What has been the efforts to contain the fire thus far?
All right. So in terms of containing the fire, we know we have our fire tender here. We had support, or we have support from Jarshang. A number of tenders came up, and then we have the private sector who also would have lent support. I would have reached out to the company that is currently constructing the bridge. The chairman would have reached out to both sides. We have the road company, Namalco, and they sent 2 trucks, and then it had this private guy, he you know, volunteered one of his trucks. So over the course of yesterday, we had about 10 trucks working overtime to make sure that they keep this fire under control. The other thing is what we use is some other equipment. You notice some equipment around, small excavator, small backhoe, graders and so onwards, what we did is dig a trench here, and this is what contained the fire. You notice the trench is being dug from here.
That contained the fire from coming.
That is what contained the fire from coming up, and we dug this trench right away wrong, and then they start flooding the trench. So to make sure that this keep as moist as possible, and don't get dry, so that it can really erupt. So notice there you can get some shots along here where you see the smoke coming out. This trench was specifically dug so that you can actually reach the sun, right? You notice you're seeing sand there, because all this stuff that is up there, that is sawdust and wood particles mixed together, and that is highly flammable. So we had to dig, you reach the sun, and you go right away around the sawmill straight to the end, and that was able to contain. So when the fire service said they were able to contain the blaze, that is what they mean by containing, so the fire stay over there, because this is going to burn for a couple of days, right? There's nothing you can do down there. The most you can do is contain this fire and to keep it in this gully area. But thankfully we're in a little rainy season, because if we were in the dry season, this entire fire could keep shifting and go just about 200 feet from here through this bush. There is person living in this gully, right?
That was the question I
so
was going to ask.
this is where the danger.
Living in this gully.
Exactly. So when you hear me,
how many persons you
I
live here?
I can't assess that immediately. I didn't go right down into the gully, but I was being told they have one house here, one there, and from I think about 200 feet, I had a third house, and then the houses start going down the gully straight down to the creek, in which person do their farming and all these different things. So this is why I put out the advisory since yesterday. Residents of Sawmills ward to be very, very vigilant. Because fire, you might not see it high, but it crawling below on the forest floor, and if there's anything flammable that can really erupt it can spread very quickly, and once they're engulf house, well, then we can be in a situation where the fire wheel, there's no road to go down into the gully. We can be in a situation where residents just have to abandon the house and watch it burn, right? Because of the situation there.
How big you average this area here in terms of acreage?
This entire area is about 20 acres, so 20 to 30 acres of
right now.
No, this area alone is, I average from my vantage point, is about 7-8 acres of land in this gully that is burning on fire right now.
Mark, I'm looking across the other side to the valley, and I'm seeing flames there on that side. Lots of flames.
All right, so that is a sawmill there. That is behind Chetram Sawmill. There's another sawmill there, and that is dead debris. So as of yesterday afternoon when I leave here, that was dry. Nothing was happening there. The fire was in the center there. But over the night, the fire spread and caught on to that sawmill debris. So that is what you were seeing, that inferno last night. You were seeing engulfing and also looking like lava. That is that heap over there. By the smoke, you can't see it clear. But that heap, would have caught fire last night, and that's been burning all night. And so this entire gully there gonna burn for a couple of days. But I don't know, once the rain continue.
Have the Ghana Fire Service done the same thing over there in terms of building this kind of a meant to keep the fire down?
Not at the time we were over there, because the fire was not there yesterday afternoon, right? The fire was more concentrated because of the wind blowing from east to west. Mm-hmm. But the fire constantly crawled slowly because it was going against the wind. That is why it took time. So last night, sometime during the night, that is when that fire really caught fire, right? But because it's on the eastern side and the wind is coming across here, I don't think it will affect them so much. There all the smoke and everything going to come in this direction. So it wouldn't really affect the sawmill to not burn out the waste there and go in that direction. But what I'm saying again, thank God we're in the wet season, we're not in the dry season, because this fire pushed towards the gully where the houses and farmers is. Currently at the moment, down like about 200-300 feet into this direction, there's farmers. So we're just hoping that this fire is contained along here where you see burn out over the period of the night. The leaves are wet, so it wouldn't push forward too much. We're just hoping that it stay and contain right within this area, because if this bush catch a fire, well, then we just have to say a prayer for the people who's living, just beyond here.
Mark, repeat the questions for the audience, because you have the mic.
Okay.
We made to understand that the CDC is on the ground as well, helping to coordinate stuff.
Yeah, the CDC, I'm not seeing them at the moment, but I know yesterday a team came up, and they was coordinating, taking aerial footage and so onward to assess how the fire is moving, what direction it's moving, and these things, and the radius of the fire to make sure that we can really contain the fire. And this call into sharp focus, not just the CDC coordinating, but aerial, our ability to outfire aerial, right? Because of the fact that fire tender cannot go down there to out the fire, right? And you have to do that is where you take into consideration you need aerial support, and I hope we in our economy at the moment can really invest in these modern firefighting technologies to make sure that we combat fire like this, because we could not be thankful that this is a dump site at the moment and not in the residential area. The residential area is too clear. It's too close. It's close enough to make sure that give me a section. Let me just check the trench and see how dry. I know last night here, if you notice water running down here, we would have flood this area. Yeah, so the trench here is about 12 to 13 feet deep, right away wrong, to make sure that we reach the sun. So you see in there that is about 12, estimate about 15 feet of debris from the sun to the top here. That is how deep you have to go down to make sure that you reach the sun, so that the fire does not come across over to the sawmill here. And they have to constantly wetting the structure that is right behind me to make sure that nothing don't fly over and to catch and burn the sawmill there, putting person out of job, destroying our infrastructure and so onwards. Of course, there's another mill over there, a locust mill. I think they moved the mill over the course of the night to make sure. I think the mill is still here to make sure that we don't have no damage. But two things, Sharon, I want, as I'm here, I want to address, and this is where the conversation will go a little bit more deeper when this is all settled. We will need to call in forestry, the Guyana Forestry Commission, and we will need to call in the EPA to make sure that proper waste disposal method is being employed, because this is part of your license. When you get a license from EPA and you get a license from forestry, right? You have guideline in how you dispose of garbage. Of course, we know that sawmill, they can't burn and all these things, because we are part of that LCDS signatories, and whereby we try to make sure as least as possible greenhouse gas go into the air. And this is what contaminate the air so far, and so this is a disaster by itself. But after this, we need to call in forestry and make sure that all these sawmills are following the guidelines, following the rules. It's easy for person to get a phone call and all these things when person not following the rules. But when a disaster comes, this is when we know what is wrong and what is right. And so the focus now will be on those two agencies that really regulate forestry, who regulate these sawmills on a day-to-day basis, and EPA, who have to do the impact assessment to make sure that they're following all the rules and regulations, so that the environment will not be destroyed. And only yesterday on my live, I was showing how over there you were seeing a toucan in a tree with a nest, and all those would have been destroyed. We destroying our flora and fauna, our wildlife, and all these different things at the same time. Would have been, so we might just see in this the damage here, but we're not considering all the flora and fauna that will be destroyed in the gully there, all the wildlife
again,
that is there.
You've said about 20 acres largely, but about 8 acres on fire.
On fire
right now.
right
Mark,
now.
is there a housing, a residential housing area close by here that might be affected directly by all this smoke and heat and fire?
Yeah, well, that is South Ameil's ward, where all the smoke is going currently. South Ameil's ward start, as I say, I can see a roof right from my vantage point. There's a roof about 200 feet through the bush there. You might not see it with the footage, but there's a roof you see in there straight through. If you look straight over there, there's a roof there. So there's houses there sporadically, and then the housing scheme would have started. Well, of course, those people would have started living there over a period of time, but they would have taken up resident going on the gully. Mostly the farmers would have taken up this area, because mostly this area was set aside for farmers, to farm. So over the course of the year, they've been farming, and they decide to build their house right on those same farmland. And so mostly I can say is the farmers in Amelia's ward. They're living in this immediate valley here, so they will be affected. Downstream, other flora and fauna will be affected. Some people there depend on fishing. I'm not able to say if there is any sweetwater fish that fish farming is doing in the area, but of course I know a lot of dasheen and eddos and so on where is planting down in that valley So we're really hoping that it contain. But with this thick smoke that we see going through this bush, this definitely is going to affect the housing area that is down that area in South Amelia's ward there. And so we still need to assess the damages. We still need to go into the bushes there and assess and make sure that this fire is really contained and make sure it's not moving, because if it is moving, and that's why I'm here this early this morning, to make sure that if it is moving, that we employ another method so that we can stop this fire if it do get through this bush that we see in here currently. Right? We don't want person to lose in property at this time. We see in different area what fire can do, how it can destroy life, how it can destroy property and all these different things. And so we are very concerned in Region 10 to make sure that our residents are safe. And right now we got to step up a little. The smoke is actually affecting us here. Right? From time to time, as the wind pick up, it will take this smoke more over to the housing area. So we'll continue to monitor throughout the day. I was here yesterday into the night, and so was pretty much tired.
Do you get a sense that the CDC, maybe the EPA, they have been monitoring this wind purity, the quality of the air here and so on?
Well, of course, I can't say from the EPA. I haven't seen the EPA team on ground. At least no one from the EPA would have reached out to me. I can't say at this moment from the chairman, but I know we are constant communication with the CDC, and we are monitoring and coordinating. So far, we have a disaster preparedness group in which the regional chairman is the coordinator of that group, and so information would have already been updated. We would have already get an update from a fireman, the divisional fire officer, and personnel from CDC would have already update the group so far on what is taking place, right? So throughout the day, different personnel will be on the ground monitoring. I mean, all of us can't be here throughout the day. There's different other stuff to be done, but we'll be monitoring the situation. And of course, both sides, I want to say thanks to both sides, and thanks to the company that is currently constructing the bridge, that would have responded promptly on my calling, and asking for assistance. In which
that is the other question I had for you. What has been that response? Because I know you all have been asking for equipment and so on from big companies that are here.
Well, there's one thing to ask publicly, but there's also another thing to make sure that you reach out personally. And so I would have reached out to the public relation officer, and right away, of course, they had their own concern because they suffered some damages during the disturbance that we see on the 8th day of April. But nevertheless, they cooperate, they understand, they cooperate duty to the residents of Region 10 and Linden, and so they would have responded promptly. The manager and the public relation officer, they came, they met me on the ground. We assessed the situation, and they would have responded with their water tanks. And so it doesn't have the capability of the fire truck to spray water in distance, but at least in a 30 to 40 feet radius, they was able to soak the place with their water tank, which was I can't say, a couple well gallons that hold. I think 20,000 liters or something like that they tank holding. And so they were able to come, and the private, I must say, to I think C. Marbir, the guy across the road, he responded without even asking about it. He came home and he saw there's right opposite the sawmill, he saw the inferno, and his family would have indicated to him, I know that there's a fire over there, and he responded without even asking if they need assistance. He just go and get his guys, and they start following the trucks, and they come and respond. So the response from the community is quite good, I must say. Of course, there's others that are going to watch on, and some of the sawmill who I'm really disappointed in, who is still working. And if you can hear since yesterday, you're hearing the sawmill engine in the background, the moldance is working, and I'm disappointed in them. I must voice that I'm disappointed in that. There's a disaster. Your colleagues, it might be your competition along that is now being affected because the worst has passed you. But instead of down tools and bond together and say, well, okay, what we can do, how we can help. All right. In that end, I must say I'm disappointed in those families that is still working. I know they have deadline and all these things to meet. But however, in time of crisis, we need to bond together and come regardless if it's our competition is being affected or not. But nevertheless, in the general, the companies that is operating within Region 10, the large companies, I must thank them, and I really appreciate the help that they would have provided. And I believe that if any further this fire should proceed any further, I know that they will, respond, because if this fire should start proceeding here, well, then we're going to have to call in like bulldozer. So we'll probably have to clear out a piece of the forested area and get a separation between the housing and this forested area that you're seeing currently. So we're monitoring that. I will take a walk around that area and see what is going on there. Probably we take a walk around there and see how much house get an assessment.
Yeah.
And
let's leave
make
that
sure
for our next
Yeah.
update. Mark, the final question I have for you. Have you seen any government official? You said there is 20 acres perhaps on the threat here, with about 78 acres on the fire right now. Have you seen any government official thus far on the scene here?
Not personally, I haven't seen any government official at the moment. The only person that represents the government I saw here yesterday, in which we had a brief conversation, is the regional executive officer, Dwight John. He was here assessing the situation with me. Of course, I had a conversation with the fire chief. He was on the ground, Mr. Gregory Whittock. I don't want to pronounce his name and pronounce it wrong, but the fire chief was here yesterday assessing the situation also. And so we would have had an introduction, and he would have explained to me what they're going to do and what they will do to contain the fire. And so that is where the decision would have taken to dig the trench right away around the sawmill to keep the fire contained, so that it wouldn't spread to the nearby building and sawmill that is here. Of course, I now see that the guys moved the mill just in case, because the fire was threatening here last night. So it's just the structure here and the plastic on the roof. But nevertheless, those are the two from a government perspective, the two highest ranking. The regional executive officer for the region was here yesterday, and the fire chief, who I believe is one of the important person to help coordinate what is going on. Of course, he have his divisional officer, Mr. Hola. I haven't seen Mr. Hola as yet, of course, but I know he's on the ground assessing and making sure that everything is coordinating. Of course, there was some concern last night, early into last night, whereby all the fire tenders had retreated, but of course they had to go and refill and get some rest, because they was out here since the night before working around the clock, so they had to get some rest and make sure that they come back. So later in the night they came back, because I sent the fire chief a message and let him know my concern. In the night he would have sent the number of the divisional commander to me, and so they would have came back here last night and monitored the fire. So if you notice, the tanks, they retreated. I believe they're gone on to refill and to monitor the situation and to conserve the energy, because this is for at least what I'm seeing. You can see right beyond me here, the fire is still raging, but thankfully we had some early morning showers, and so the trees, they are wet, the leaves, they are wet, and I believe the fire will be contained so far in this area. But I'm still concerned with this breeze, and with the heat drying the trees, because if you notice, all these trees, they are already dry. Those are dry leaves, so they are priming out the light. But of course, I'm just hoping that this fire stay within this vicinity here and doesn't spread beyond where those guys are doing their farming and so onwards.
All right, Mark. And finally, how many mills you average are on the threat here?
Yeah, well, the worst have passed because of the wind, right? Does these two yesterday? The focus was on these two.
What mill are we at currently?
I know beyond is Troy Fitco. I think this one that we are at, I think is MG Sawmill or something. This is the last sawmill here, right? In this entire area, which cover about 50 acres, I believe, or 50, 60, probably in a radius of about 100 acres, there is probably about 15 total sawmill in this entire area. This area was designated a industrial area, industrial site. All right, so beyond, there's a lot of sawmill there, totaling about 15, somewhere around the 15, 16 sawmills. But the immediate, this threat would have threatened about 7 to about 9 sawmill. Majority of the threat would have shifted here, and so yesterday, the latter half of yesterday, the focus was on these two, Troy Fitco and MG Sawmill. And so far, we had to contain by digging this trench to protect those two sawmills. Of course, this sawmill had a structure there that completely engulfed. And so we had to focus on protecting this structure here, because this holds one of the most important equipment, which is the molder. That is the equipment that really make lap edge and V-joint and all these different profiling wood, right? And so that area was being, we tried to protect that area, keep constantly wetting the building and dig a large trench and constantly flooding the trench so that it doesn't engulf and, you know, put person out of a job. Because I believe for a sawmill this size, there's no less than 15 to 20 employees here, and you know, for 50 to 20 employees going out of job now is putting them on the bread, putting family on the bread line, which would affect, I average on a family of 3, would affect at least about 50-60% when you take all the household that will be dependent on this sawmill, and another 20 on the other side. So we average these two sawmills alone is about 100% depending upon it, you know, for a daily bread. And so it is important, we as leaders and the firefighters and all the other groups, CDC and so, in protecting this, because in protecting this structure, you also protect jobs that can be lost, right? And infrastructure that would have taken years to build. So nevertheless, we are happy that this fire would have contained here. So the focus now is just to making sure that the fire does not creep through the bush and then reach to the housing, because as I say before, housing start about 200 to 300 feet beyond this bushy area that you see in here, because a creek at the bottom of this valley keep going there. This is a watershed area. I must emphasize that is a watershed. There's a creek sprung in from different area around this entire valley, leading into one creek to another creek to different arteries until it reached to the Karakara Creek, right? So that is the focus now that we will be focusing on, going around, assess, see how far the distance the fire is, and if it is moving, what pace it is moving at, and all these different things, so you can assess. Of course, I see the rain is set up behind me, so you know, the prayers, we hear the prayers from everyone that is praying for Linden, and so I believe the Father hear the prayer too, so that we can have this rainfall that we see, you know, coming over, this dark cloud that we see coming over Linden. So we just make sure that, you know, this rain can really pour down, and you know, to help us, help the fire men them in containing this fire. Of course, I look over there where we are, the other threat, you're still seeing that fire is blazing. I mean, you can't see it from through the smoke, through the lens, but from my naked eyes, you can see that fire is still blazing in there.
The valley here, on the other side.
You can still see what all around that facing coming right away around the eastern side. Watch, every time the smoke ease up, you're seeing that blaze still going. So this fire is still much raging in the valley there. So we know that, you know, with the wind is picking up, probably it coming with the rain, the smoke and all these things gonna affect people downstream, and that is our concern, you know, to make sure that person is being safe in that area. So from here, I will go down to that area, assess, see how person is being affected on these things, and you know, to report back to the CDC if there's any emergency, if there's any evacuation. We must say able to put evacuation system in place, able to put things in place that if person may need shelter or so, if this fire should go out. But I pray that, you know, it is really contained in this area. But nevertheless, if we see that threat is coming, we will activate, you know, further to put things in place, shelter and so on, how we can evacuate person and evacuate their belonging and all these things, their prized possession and so. But nevertheless, we'll monitor it throughout the remaining of the day. We'll keep updating the disaster preparedness committee, and so we'll have a real-time communication between the CDC headquarters, the personnel on the ground, and all the other personnel that is involved currently watching and keep observing this fire at the moment.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, folks, you heard it there. We're going to try to get an update for you folks later on. Let me try to get this mic on back. Yeah, we're going to try to get an update for you guys. Thanks for joining us, all you folks. This is what we have at the moment. You heard the regional vice chair saying there what obtains on the ground here, the help they're getting, the help that they need. They're still monitoring the situation here. The jobs that are at risk because of the fire at these sawmills. This is as soon as you come into Linden. As soon as you come into Linden, the sawmills are on the left-hand side there. Hundreds of jobs at stake here. People live down in this valley where this fire is happening. It's as the regional vice chair Margot Ring said, it started in the valley and is now coming up on all sides here. Stay posted to our Facebook page at Credible Sources. We're going to try to get you guys more visuals here, whether it's video or photographs of exactly what's happening. We're going to try to get to our eyes in the sky and see what's happening here. Otherwise, the CDC is involved, the Ghana Fire Service, Ghana Police Force. Interestingly, the Vice Chair says, Carolyn Haley, the Vice Chair says that he hasn't seen any government official. The regional officials here have been the highest ranking government members who've come. He said the Dwight John, who is the REO, the Regional Executive Officer, he's been out here yesterday, but there's 20 acres at stake here, and the Regional Vice Chair, I think himself, who's involved in forestry, Mark Goring, said about 8 acres is on fire right now, and it's quite interesting that no government official has yet come up here. Quite interesting. Folks, we're going to leave it there. We apologize for this very truncated program this morning, but this is what's happening on the ground. We wanted you guys to get a sense for yourself what's happening here. This has pretty much escalated overnight. This is rolling on to 42, going on to 72 hours since this fire has started here. And you heard the regional vice chair say that they expect that this is going to burn for days because they've been dumping sawmill wastes behind the sawmills down in this valley here for years. So it's a lot of wood basically here, whether it's shaving, it's chip wood, it's whatever waste wood, but people live down in this valley as well, and that's one of the major concerns here. Beyond here, he says, about 200 meters, there's a housing area there. We're going to take a look at that, and we're going to have another update for you guys as soon as we can. Good morning, folks, and joining you here from Linden. Let me turn so at least you get some of this in the background. Again, we apologize for a very truncated program. Lots of heavy winds here, lots of smoke, and lots of fire that our imagery right now is not going to do any justice to at all. And that's why once we close, we're going to get up in the air and take some more of that. Thanks very much for joining us. Folks, Sherry Duncan here for Credible Sources. I don't have company this morning. I see some of you guys saying, stay safe, and you guys would have feel better if I had some company here. But that being said, folks, we're monitoring what's happening here. Thanks for joining us, and we're going to leave it there for now.